What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Dakar Desert Rally, and in this video I wanted to go over a topic that I've been thinking about a good amount the past couple of days from playing Dakar. So, am I the only one that thinks a lot of the classic vehicles should be in their own specific class, at least when playing sport mode? Because I've noticed when using these vehicles that you really can't do much of anything. So, the reason why I do say sport mode though is because if you guys do play the simulation mode, obviously all the vehicles are going to be capped at a certain speed, so I really don't think these vehicles might be affected as the thing about this though is in order to unlock all the classic vehicles, you do actually have to play sport mode to get them, which I'm sure a lot of people are not happy about that. So if you guys were playing simulation, you cannot unlock the vehicles in that. And I would say if you guys are running the classic vehicles, simulation is probably going to be the best game mode you can play because the cars are actually fast enough. I have been noticing, like, messing around with like the Citroen 2CV, that in sport mode, you basically cannot ever win a race in these unless you got kind of lucky, or depending on maybe the track you might have been on that the car might be fast enough. For example, as I did mention before, the Citroen is definitely not going to be quick enough. I was getting passed by all the AI, and even the other stage of AI after I was in the event for a little bit were also catching up to me. So you probably can't do much of anything unless you're going down a hill because obviously the cars are going to be faster. But I have noticed the 2CV probably has around the same speed as like pretty much the ATVs do, which can be a bit of an issue. But then again, if they did have some of the classic cars in a race by themselves for sport mode, maybe it would give players a chance to actually use them. And considering the fact that you do have to play sport mode to unlock them, it kind of defeats the purpose of using them in that game mode. But if you guys wanted to, you obviously could run the classics in like simulation mode. But then again, I feel like a lot of players might want to play the sport mode to like chill or something like that, or maybe play a different type of game mode, and having the vehicle not be fast enough might definitely be an issue. So for example, looking in the menu here, you guys are going to notice the speed on many of the classic cars are probably not going to be all that great. For example, the DS23 here is going to be a really cool looking car, but if you guys were to run this thing, you're probably going to again get pretty much passed by every single AI in sport mode. There's really not much of anything you can do, which I will obviously show gameplay of this in the background as well. Now, if I had to guess, I would say this really isn't that big of a deal because I really haven't used the classic vehicles all that much. But then again, as I did mention before, you do have to play sport mode to unlock them, so it's kind of a point of wanting to run them and test them out. But every single AI is going to pass you because they're obviously all modern vehicles, and we all know some of the classic cars might not have that technology or maybe the speed that the newer cars might, and you pretty much cannot keep up with them at all. I did notice with the DS23 though that you luckily can keep up with cars going down a hill because the car does like 180, but on like flat ground, the car's averaging like 125 to like 140 if that, so you really can't do much of anything, and most of the other AI in that match that you're in are probably going to catch up to you and or pass you, so you're probably not going to be able to stay up in front very long, which I do think can get kind of annoying. But again, I really don't think this is going to be game breaking in any way because obviously some of the classic vehicles like the Peugeot here, which I honestly might have butchered that name, is probably going to be a really fun car to use and also probably one of my favorites as well. But these cars are obviously really fast, and even the other one over here, which is the Grand Raid, might have a slower top speed, quote unquote, being a 7, but I have noticed this vehicle still doing around 200 kilometers pretty easily on many areas of the races I used it on. So obviously these classic vehicles are going to be worth going after, but I personally feel like if you guys are not playing simulation all that much and you do go after like the Citroen 2CV or the DS23 as well, you're probably going to be disappointed trying to run these vehicles on sport mode. At least that's what I have noticed anyway. And one thing I also do want to mention, by the way, is this also brings me to the other vehicle, which is going to be the Catalina, which is obviously one of the really cool looking bikes in the game. But obviously upon first glance, once you guys unlock this thing, you're going to notice the speed's going to be a 2.0 and the acceleration is a 3.5. And I also noticed with the handling being a 4.5 that this bike does handle a lot better than it really does say, at least in that aspect. Now, a few things I did want to go over with this vehicle is the fact that, for one, obviously this bike is again not going to be quick enough on sport mode. I did notice no matter what, guys, the AI is always going to pass because the bike really only does about 140 kilometers or so. I was noticing getting around some areas with it, I was hitting like 170 or so sometimes, but that was obviously going down a hill. But on flat ground, the bike is not going to be fast enough in sport mode, which I do want to mention that in this video because obviously if you guys were playing simulation, the speed is going to be capped at a certain amount, so obviously the classic vehicles are going to do just fine. But am I the only one that thinks like a legit game mode maybe separate for the classic vehicles and sport mode would be kind of cool? Because Obviously, going against other vehicles in that classic class, so to speak, are going to make that a lot more fun. If you're going against modern vehicles, I feel like it's going to be a bit of a nightmare, and the fact that you do have to play sport mode, as I did mention before, to unlock these vehicles, are probably going to make a lot of players wonder why they can't actually use them in sport mode because they're not quick enough. Obviously, all the modern vehicles are going to completely obliterate you in pretty much every way, which honestly does make a lot of sense considering how these vehicles have improved nowadays and compared to before, but I still think the classic vehicles are a lot of fun to use, and being able to actually race them in sport mode and or want to use them going against some of the other AI I think would be a lot of fun. I know not everybody does like the simulation mode, but obviously that's probably where these vehicles are going to be the most effective, at least until they add something where you can use them in the other game modes, considering the fact that I did mention before, you do have to unlock the classic vehicles in sport mode, which is kind of interesting considering you can't really use them in there because all the vehicles are modern and they're constantly destroying you anyway because they're way faster. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Besides that, I really do think the car is a lot of fun, and having the option to use the classic vehicles versus other classic vehicles and or the classic bike for example would probably be a lot of fun, but also a different experience because these vehicles are going to be different to drive, and I think that would add more variety into the game and just more things to do, but also mixing up the gameplay a little bit more. But again, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below, because I think this would be a pretty cool feature, but also give players a lot more vehicles to mess around with.